Yo, what's up everyone? Season's greetings and happy holidays. Just in time for Christmas, I've got another Halloween image. I meant to have this one out weeks ago, but I was having some seriously bogus computer issues on top of a bunch of other work. I wanted to make a movie poster style image combining all of the best slasher villains from horror movies new and old. I hope you dig it, cause I'm working on another one of Christmas movie characters that's what was supposed to be out now, but instead will be out after the new year. Just in time, right? Ugh, whatever. Enjoy. Oh, and please don't forget to like and subscribe. For me. It's Christmas. Please. Come on.
It's Christmas time!
So the first step was to scour the internet looking for high quality images of the characters I wanted to include. I made sure to download a handful of different poses for each one so I had some options to choose from when deciding where they were going to go in the composition. I did a super rough cutout to separate the characters from their backgrounds just so I could easily move them around the canvas and switch out different images until I got a composition I liked. Only after I decided which pose of each character I wanted to use did I spend the time and mask them out in detail. Once I was happy with the placement, I went ahead and softened the harsh edge at the bottom of the mask on Leatherface here so it had a nice fade in. Then did the same thing with Pinhead. Fun fact, even though he's commonly known as Pinhead, and even the marketing for the original Hellraiser film referred to the character with that name, it isn't actually his name. Writer-director Clive Barker actually left him unnamed in the movie script and only ever referred to him as the Priest. He absolutely hates the name Pinhead and prefers the Priest or Hell Priest. Anyway, now you know.
And knowing is half the battle.
The image I used of Jason, he's missing his whole right side, so I had to just copy and paste part of his left side over to the right. Normally that might make the two sides look a little too similar, but in this instance you don't really see his left side because it's hidden behind Chucky. Then I just faded the bottom of his mask as well. Here, because Chucky's head was against such a dark background, I wasn't able to get a very good mask around his hair, so I had to manually paint in some hair over the mask. There, that's better. It doesn't have to be perfect, just better than that blurry mess that it was before. Then fade the bottom of the mask. The top of Freddy's hat was cut off just a little bit in the original image, so I just sampled the color and painted in the missing piece manually. And erased some of his mask like we've been doing. The image I used of Ghostface here is actually just a screenshot from one of the movies, so it's a little too dark. We'll be balancing the brightness of all the images in a minute, but I did go ahead and brighten this one up first. You can also see a lot of artifacting and film grain close up, which was bothering me because it made it look so much lower quality compared to the other images. It's really a nitpick that you'd probably never see unless this was going to be blown up to the size of an actual film poster, but I went ahead and used a smudge brush and fixed it. Now, when I was erasing and fading the bottom of this mask, at first I used the normal soft fade, just like I did with all the other images. But later on, when I was adding details to the image, I came back and used a blood splatter brush to add this splatter texture to the mask instead of just that soft fade. It'll make more sense once we add blood splatter effects later. I just wanted to explain why the mask was different on this one. And fade the bottom of the clown. By the way, if you haven't watched the Terrifier movies with old Art the Clown here, do it. They're a lot of fun. He's both funny and terrifying, which is a balance that normally skews one way over the other when tried, but works perfectly with him. Okay, so I wanted Chucky's knife to be a little more visible, both because it's a big part of his character and to help balance the composition with Leatherface's chainsaw. The knife in the original image is also cut off, but doesn't really have a lot of detail anyway because of the light glare, so I found a PNG online of a similar knife that was already masked out and just dropped it in. I masked away the handle so he's holding it properly, and masked away some of Pennywise's hair so that Chucky's hand is in front of him with the knife. And faded his mask. Next, I filled in the empty spaces between the characters with black so that you wouldn't see through to this red circle. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with this circle yet, but visually I knew I wanted it there. More on that shortly. Now, up until this point, I've kept the background white, knowing I was going to turn it black after I got everything placed and masked, just to make it easier to see the images masked when erasing them. But we're done with that now, so chabow! Alright, now this next step accomplished a few things. What I did was add a camera raw filter to each image individually. You see, because all the images come from different movies from different time periods with different lighting and varying degrees of quality and resolutions, I needed to do my best to make them look as similar as possible to one another, like they were all taken at the same time. To accomplish this, the first thing I did inside of Camera Raw was try and even out the highlights and shadows in each image so that they matched each other as close as possible. I used these sliders and brought out detail in the shadows and highlights to try and flatten the contrast so that I had a fairly flat image to work with to add my own lighting later. I also used the texture and clarity sliders to bring out some more details. Then I did a little color balancing inside Camera Raw. The settings were different for each image, I just needed to tweak them to match each other a little better so that I had an even place to start from when adding this overall red color cast with a curves adjustment layer. This just helps tie everything together a little better, I think, and it'll add a nice contrast to the blue highlights we'll be adding in a minute. Before we do that though, I wanted to fix the contrast on Freddy's hat so that it's the same value of black as the surrounding blacks. And next I added some shadowing behind the knife here just to kind of give some separation behind the knife from Pennywise. And over here to separate Chucky and Freddy. I also went around and did some global dodging and burning on everybody just so they looked a little bit more three-dimensional. Just before adding blue highlights to everything coming from the left-hand side. I used a solid color adjustment clipped to each character separately and blend if to isolate it to just the bright areas. Then painted on the mask of the solid color adjustment where I wanted it to show. And above this I painted a brighter edge highlight with a brighter bluish white color. You'll also notice a subtle glow around some of the brighter areas like the knife or Jigsaw's white glove. Now to separate the characters a little more, I went around with both blue and red smoke brushes to add some haze behind the characters. It was about this time I realized what I wanted to do with the circle. A moon, duh. It was so obvious. So I dropped one in, masked it, put it on overlay blending mode and dropped its opacity by half. I wanted it to be pretty subtle. I don't want to draw too much attention away from the characters. Alright, upon looking at this image so far, I really didn't like that bright spot on the knife, and I finally figured out why. It should have been a lens flare. Much better. Now, what's a horror movie poster without some... I just used some splatter brushes I have and painted with red around a few places. This is also where I went back to the Ghostface mask and added the splatter effect to it like you saw earlier. I also added some blood to the chainsaw up here. Now I don't like how clean the edges are around the moon, so I thought about what else goes in a horror scene. Dead trees. That's perfect because I have a bunch of dead tree brushes, so I just used a bunch of those and put them behind the moon. And that did the trick. Jigsaw's tricycle is way too bright. Much better. Okay, I think this is looking pretty badass. Now I want to work on the background. I knew I wanted some kind of horror scene going on at the bottom and behind these floating heads. I was out of well-known slashers that I could think of, so I just went for something creepy and horror-themed. Something that would look good as a silhouette. I thought, where do slasher movies usually take place? Houses, camps, farms, cabins? No, a shed. I can't think of why exactly, but an old shed just screams slasher villain to me. Okay, now I have a direction to go in. So I started with a red gradient to make the sky and to keep with the blood red theme we have. I used a hard black brush to draw the ground, and hey, look at that. It makes Jigsaw look like he's riding his little trike bike on it. That was a happy accident. I roughed up the edge of the ground layer, then used a grass brush to paint in some grass. And used my dead tree brushes again to put a few trees in the foreground and a couple in the background. Now I needed some dark, foreboding clouds in the sky, so I brought in this image and set it to overlay blending mode. Here's our shed, masked it out, moved it behind the ground layer, and turned it into a silhouette. Now I wanted the barn to be lit from inside with a creepy light, so to show that I first masked out the doorway and some cracks in the wood. I also put a little haze on this layer, then used a solid color adjustment with brighter red color and applied those to the cutouts. Then added a bit more haze around the shed just to push it into the background. I wanted the shed to have some dimension to it, so I just made the right side slightly darker. Alright, now, what else could I put in this field? Something spooky. Like I said, I can't think of any more slashers, but I need something recognizable from just the silhouette. Ugh, I guess I'll have to go with my good old standbys, Zambies. I guess they always look cool and they give the vibe I want, so it's fine. Here we go. Now let's make them silhouettes and put some haze in front of them so that they're in the background a bit. Good. Now to tie this all together with some camera raw adjustments to the color and to bring out some more detail. There was still a little issue with the balance of the whole composition, and after staring at it for a few minutes, it was Chucky's knife. Ah yes, that fixed the symmetry. Alright, just a few more little touches and it's done. To give it a more illustrated look, I made a stamped visible layer of everything and did some smudge painting on that. Hell yeah, that looks awesome. Let's just sharpen that and add one more color adjustment. Perfect, that's a wrap. I think it's done. So I also made a version that has highlights around the moon. I kind of felt like it made the image just a little bit too busy, but I don't know, maybe not. What do you think? Let me know in the comments which one you like better. Anyway, thanks for watching, and Merry Christmas.